Afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon to everybody. Really looking forward to this session, and hopefully you will get as much out of this as I got putting this together. This presentation was done a number of years ago for the PGA of America. I'm originally from South Africa, so I'm a member of the PGA of South Africa, PGA of America, and it really was we were seeing in the industry more and more of our members taking on leadership roles within the industry. And as a result of that, trying to figure out a presentation or an education session that helped people better understand how to transition from day-to-day director of golf, head golf professional, into a more senior role within the industry. And specifically, we found that certainly here in the US, we found that there were a number of our members who were aspiring to be general managers of big clubs. And we found that in doing that, they just really weren't that well prepared or that well versed in that track, as it were. So this was created a while back doing that, and it's been modified over the years. So again, I'd love to, and I'm not sure quite how this works on Zoom, Matt, but I do want it to be interactive, but part of it is because of the presenting format of Zoom, I kind of have to go into presentation mode and show you my screen. And I guess the questions will pop up either in the chat, and again, you can always unmute yourself and jump into the conversation. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to do a screen share here.
Yeah, and just before you get started there, Michael, if anybody, just raise your hand. Everybody's used to Zoom by now, so you can either do your raise hand feature, post in the chat, and I will moderate that with Michael.
Great. Can everybody see the screen? I'm hoping everybody did. We checked with Matt earlier, it seemed to work. So again, the title of this is Management 101. You want to be a GM in the golf and private club industry. So why is that not working? Matt, sorry, I'm just having a problem with the screen forwarding. So I wanted to share a little bit about myself with you, just a little bit. We're following the same educational format that I do for the PGA. And just again, I share this because I don't know that I've ever met any of you. Hendrik van der Heldt, you and I have a very similar background, I would imagine. Your name sounds Dutch, which is very similar to mine. But I show you this because I think it's important, if you moving through the ranks and want to take a leadership role, that you look to other organizations outside of our PGA organizations to be able to provide you with levels of education that are worthwhile and that can help you as you move through this. I chose CMAA, got to spend time on their board, eventually was the president for CMAA, but really put a lot of store and value in my CCM and my CCE, which I ended up getting and pursuing. And it really has been very beneficial as you move through this. You know, some of the things we're going to talk about today is, you know, what is the role of a general manager or CEO or leadership role within the clubs? Why is it that this elevation to a general manager or to a CEO is the best kept secret? If you talk, and I go around and talk to all of our PGM schools, PGA schools, talk to the CMAA chapter, talk to the young people coming to the industry, and most of the kids in hospitality have this vision of wanting to go into hotels. And some of you may have been in hotels before. I started my career in hotels, so there's nothing wrong with that. But I just don't think the universities, the schools, and the mentors are doing the kids today a favor in sharing with them how good it is to be either in the private club industry or in the resort industry as it relates to sports. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the day-to-day responsibilities. We'll talk about the CMAA's position on this concept. We'll talk about some characteristics and traits. There's a new management to leadership model that the PGA put out that I'd like to share with you. We'll talk a little bit about leadership in general, and I believe how the leadership traits that I think are important for life in general, but certainly for the industry we in. And then how do we build our resumes? How do we climb the ladder? and how do we eventually get that top job? And then most importantly, once we get it, how do you keep it? And part of that is my background is originally from South Africa, in the sports business, undergraduate degree, went back to school, did a graduate degree in the golf business, in the hotel business, and trying to leverage all of that to be able to sort of stay current in our industry. I retired from active club management or club leadership about 3 years ago, started my own company. And what I do now is I consult for a number of different clubs. Riviera Country Club in LA is one of the clubs I work with. I work for the PGA of America. I do work with them. I've got other projects that I'm doing. The reason I tell you that is part of what I do is executive search. And when I do executive search, it really is important, as you can all imagine, is finding and matching candidates. And it's one thing getting a job, but as I said earlier, it's also really important to figure out how you keep that job. I just get too many calls from head golf professionals, directors of golf, general managers, CEOs of clubs, where their boards are going in a different direction and these individuals are kind of left out in the cold. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some private clubs. We're going to talk about roles. We'll talk about the model. All of these things I mentioned to you a little bit earlier. So when you think about private clubs, and you can equate private clubs, you can think at the same time of high-end daily fees. You can think of the same public golf courses, and you can think again of resort courses. When you think about the 4 pillars in our industry, you're going to end up in one of those 4 pillars, right? So you're either going to be tied to a public golf course, a high-end daily fee, a resort facility that, you know, that has accommodation, or a private club. And I guess why is it the best kept secret? And the reason I believe it's the best kept secret in the hospitality industry is because it's one where the entry-level positions, the mid-level positions, and the senior leader positions, just there's more remuneration. And by that, I mean that the money you take home, the packages that are put out there are just better than what you find in traditional hotels, resorts, and restaurants in the hospitality industry. It's one of those industries where certainly better than tennis, certainly better than some of the others that are out there when you think about skiing and some of the other sports that potentially we compete with. Most of the hospitality schools, and I would include our PGA schools, the PGM schools, are focused on hotel and restaurant management. And it's interesting because I'm talking to PGA members. You know, my life goal has been to help PGA members take the senior position at any of the organizations that they work at. And I say that because and some of you might be old enough on this call to remember, but 25 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, our industry, the number one position, I'm just going to talk right now about private clubs. The number one position in private clubs was the golf professional. There was no doubt in anybody's mind, the number one professional, the number one compensated person was the golf professional. And that person ran the shop, he did the merchandising, he did the teaching, he ran the golf cars, he basically ran the tournament operations, ran the entire program. And then about 25 years ago, CMAA, Club Management Association of America, came up with the CCM. And when they did that, what they did was they elevated the position of the hospitality individual to a position higher than that of a golf professional. And if you think about it this way, and I got to be careful when I talk to people, I don't mean this in a degrading way at all, but you know, I look at myself at Congressional Country Club with 2 magnificent golf courses, US Open tradition. When people come to Congressional Country Club, they're not coming there for the hamburgers. They're coming there for golf. And yet we see so many of these clubs today and in the last 20 years that are managed by people that have that hospitality background. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong, but my mission in life is to elevate our PGA golf professionals to a position where they recapture that number one position in the industry, where they actually run the facility and everybody else reports into them. The other thing here, clubs are complex. And I say that because one, clubs are complex because they have members. And members, good news and bad news. Good news is we have members. Bad news, we have members. The good news is, you know where your base is. You know where your hospitality base is. You know where your dues are coming from. The bad news, it's not really that bad news, is that you are seeing those clients, those customers day in and day out. So if you're at a resort, it's a little different. If you're a hotel, you're a little different. If you're at a public golf course, it might be a little bit different. But again, you getting to see these people time. And that part of that is relationship building. But also part of that is when you see the same people, you all know the same kind of issues, potential complaints come with that. The other challenge for a private club or any private organization is finance. You know, most of them are not for profit. So when you're not for profit, you really got to find creative ways to make this work. Yeah, I use this example often, and people say, well, give us an example of what you're talking about. And I have a friend who's a GM of a Ritz-Carlton. And when I was running Congressional in Washington, D.C., he was running a Ritz-Carlton in downtown DC. And it's a very prestigious organization, as you guys are all aware of. And we were sat down one day and we had lunch, and we were comparing a whole bunch of different things. We were comparing salary, work hours. We were comparing, you know, total remuneration, just generally what the job was all about. And, you know, my takeaway from the meeting and his takeaway from the meeting was that, you know, being in a club was just a lot more beneficial than it was being in a hotel environment or being in a resort environment. So I share that with you just as part of this ongoing discussion. So, you know, part of when you look at this and you think to yourself, well, why is one better than the other? What is one offering that the other one isn't offering? And life isn't all about money. I get that. And I put this up here really to give an understanding of why there's a difference in the different hospitality areas. If you're looking at private clubs again and hotels, and again, when you plug in, if you plug in public golf courses or resorts or high-end daily fees, these numbers change a little bit, but generally you're going to find that the remuneration at private clubs, even today in that 100 to 300 range, you see some positions less than 100, and you know, depending on where you are in the country, you see where I am, for example, down here in the Palm Beach areas in Southeast Florida. I mean, these numbers on a high base salary could be up around $1 million. So again, that is a lucrative area, and that's why there are a number of our members that are looking to get into that space. It comes with bonuses of your annual salary. It comes with, in often cases, comes with housing, comes with car, clothing, dining, 401ks, deferred comp, all of the other stuff. And you know, I'm sure it's similar up in Canada. You probably getting the same kind of stuff. It might be a little different, but that's sort of the expectation of what you're seeing. Now, the challenge, the big difference here for me is hours worked. And I think we all struggle as golf professionals to find that work-life balance. I can't speak for all of you on the call, but I can certainly speak for myself. The challenge I've had for the last 35 years in active management was just that work-life balance. Is how do you manage everything? How do you take care of your family, the kids, and also do what needs to be done? You know, our industry, the golf industry, is very demanding. It does take long hours, whether you're teaching, whether you're organizing tournaments, whether you're running the golf shop, or whether you're managing the facility. It takes a lot of time. You know, my philosophy with my staff, and again, for those of you who are leading staff, this work-life balance was important to me. And would say to them, I don't want you working more than 50 hours a week. And a lot of them would look at me a little strange, because 50 hours a week is, in the US, is 10 hours more than what the average person works, right? A 40-hour week. And they look at me crazy. And my point is, by telling them that is, one, it's more than what the average person is working, but two, you need to be here when you need to be here. And part of, I think, in our industry, we still struggle with the fact that senior leadership, management, it's all about being seen. It's all about visibility. It's all about being around the members. It's all about being around the clubhouse. It's being at the facility. It's meeting and greeting guests. Well, again, there's only so much of that you can do, and you've got to figure that out. But my message to my senior staff was, if you don't have anything going on at the club, if you don't have anything going on at the resort, go home, come back when you need to be here. So it's not necessarily about visibility. It's more about, are you being productive when you are here? And then I shared with you earlier, knowing your customers. The good news about the clubs and resorts is, your customers, most of the time they're returning, and I think that's a real advantage. So a couple of roles that you see for general managers, not just in private clubs, but in resorts and in high-end daily fees. And again, when I say private, please think of the other three at the same time. I just couldn't put them all on the slide. But it's big business. We're in this business, and we need to run it like a business. If you go back to where clubs started in the UK back 200-300 years ago, you think about what was going on in clubs when golf first got started. You think about how that developed. Even today, if you go to the UK, you go to places in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Scotland, Ireland, what you're seeing is that clubs are not all being run as a business. Oftentimes, it's an old retired military person. It's somebody who's retired from another job. He's now given the secretary title, and they're basically running the club on a shoestring. And that's not a bad thing. But I think today what we're seeing in the industry is that more and more today, these facilities are being run as a business, and you really need to understand that. And that's really the triumphant of the old versus the new. One of the big things that we talk about in private clubs a lot is committees. Now in resorts, you don't have that. You don't have that at high-end daily fees. You don't have it at public golf courses. But it is something that you have to deal with at private clubs. So again, the role of committees, in my mind, is that they're there to assist the leadership. And if they can do that, that's really helpful moving forward. One of the keys, if you're going to take that leadership role, to really test whether or not you have the leadership role, that you truly have the leadership role, is to ask yourself the question, do you have hiring and firing authority? And again, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just mean it from the point of view, when it comes to hiring senior executives that you surround yourself with, are you able to hire them, or do you have to go through multiple layers to get them on board? There are some clubs, some resorts, you've got to go through 3 or 4 different steps to be able to get there. I'm not saying you shouldn't use an HR department. I'm not saying you shouldn't have multiple interviews. I'm just saying at the end of the day, are you the one that is able to sign and bring on the additional payroll, or to replace somebody who's moving? And then conversely, the other side of that is, if somebody's not performing up to expectations, if they're not delivering in a way that is expected vis-a-vis their job description or their performance evaluation, are you in a position to be able to coach, help them, take them through the process, and at the end, if it's not working, to be able to terminate? The other thing about clubs and golf courses in general, there is generally a tradition that runs with them, and generally it has a history. And those are really important to me, because I really like the history of our game. I like the traditions of our game. I'm probably a little bit of a traditionalist, but at the same time, you don't see this in other hospitality areas. It's not like, Tuesdays, Ruby Tuesdays or Fridays, or any of these restaurants have a huge history. I mean, it's just, they don't have those traditions and histories in place, and that makes it very, very different. So I'm assuming that you all are familiar with CMAA, Club Management Association of America. You have your own association in Canada, Club Management Association of Canada. They do a lot of work with CMAA. There's a lot of joint education being done. The CCM, the Certified Club Manager, that started here in the US, was adopted by your Canadian Association. Excuse me, your Canadian Association. And right now we have quite a few members, Canadian members of CMAA, and we have a number of them that have gone through the certification process. And I've been lucky enough to do some education for your Club Manager Association. So the statement by the CMAA is one that basically talks about the general manager or chief operating officer. So in the industry, we've come up through the ranks as with different titles, just like in golf, you know, club professional, golf professional, head professional, director of golf operation. This position, the leadership position, is called many things. It started off as club manager, and that person didn't have golf or agronomy reporting through to them. Then it elevated to the position of general manager. And for those of you can figure out, the word general means you know a little bit about a lot of different things. So you general in nature and you're managing the entire operation. And then it got elevated to the chief operating officer, CEO concept, which we'll talk a little bit about today, which really kind of elevated this position where you had the president of the club, the chairman of the club board acting as a CEO, and then the position of the general manager was elevated to the position of chief operating officer. So in basic understanding of this position, the position is hired by the board of directors. It reports through to the president or the executive committee. It's responsible, you are responsible for carrying out the board's policies. So in an ideal world, in a situation that makes it a true CEO position, the board sets policies, and then you as the CEO go out and impact the club by executing on operations. It's important to know that you'll be held accountable for all areas of the club. It's really important that you take responsibility for all of the areas. And one of the areas that is really big in not just resorts, but in high-end daily fees, public golf courses, and very important in private clubs, is food and beverage. And it's one of the areas that we as golf professionals really don't get taught an awful lot about. You've got to go out and really find that information, learn that information. Education sessions by different associations now are better than they used to be, but it's an area, irrespective of where you are, it's an area that you really do need to brush up on if you're going to get, you know, up the ladder in this leadership role. It's sort of like what I tell the non-PGA golf people, golf professionals who are running clubs. They say, what's the single biggest thing that I need to learn? And my answer is golf. You need to be able to play. You don't necessarily have to pass a playing ability test, but you should understand the rules. You should understand the history and traditions, and you should understand a little bit about, you know, about handicaps and all the other good stuff. So the same, you know, is the same for those of us that are PGA members who don't have that as a background. You as that leader are the bridge to the staff and the committees. You don't want committee people telling staff what to do. It enables the board to avoid the intricacies and short-term focus that are staff responsibilities. One of the things that you all may be aware of, but I tell staff all the time when I'm working with them, if you aren't doing your job, a committee or a board or somebody else at the club, at the resort, is going to fill in what you're not doing. So you really do need to make sure you understand what it is that you're responsible for and how you're doing it. Allow the board to work more exclusively and holistically on long-term focus. And we talked about that earlier with regards to them being involved with policies. And then, finally, you do all the special reports. And I believe if you control the pen, meaning if you control the finances, if you control the minutes, if you control what's going on in the boardroom, at the end of the day, that's the position I think you want to be in, moving forward in this position. So a couple of characteristics that CMAA suggests for this position, and I've done some research on this. About 10 years ago, I really got into this. I was going to write a thesis on this. I was going to do a master's in leadership and what is it that allowed people to be successful in our industry. And I'll share some of that with you. But these are the things. Obviously, I see in my search business at least 40% of people who are being replaced, there is some element of dishonesty. And that's just unacceptable in the world we live in today. Tell you a quick story. At Augusta National, Jim James, who is the third highest ranking guy at Augusta National, who handles the club, all the hospitality, all the food and beverage, he was sharing with me a while back that they do what's called an honesty test at the beginning of the recruiting process for hiring temporary staff for the Masters. And in doing that, the very first test they give, they don't call it an honesty test, but they give this test, and the test is one question. And the question is, on a scale from 1 to 10, how honest are you? Now, I don't want you to answer that question because there is only one right answer. And it's amazing, he says, how very quickly they're able to basically cut through the chase. And anybody who answers anything less than 10 out of 10 does not get hired to do temporary work during the week of the Masters. And I just thought that that was an amazing statistic and something that really speaks to what we are. Honesty is not gray, it's sort of black and white. Straightforwardness, integrity ties into honesty, accountability, leadership, and dedication are the other ones that come out from CMAA. You need to demonstrate good interpersonal relationship skills. You need to be a great communicator. And by that, I mean, when you talk about communication, it's not just written, it's verbal, it's listening, it's presenting, it's being able to get up in the boardroom and present your finances or to present your budget. There's a lot that goes into communication. All of that can be learned. You need to be administratively and financially competent, and you need to be able to communicate the club's vision. When somebody says to you, what is Congressional Country Club about? You should be able to articulate that in a very concise manner as to what it is. Are you able to see this okay? Is any of this cut off, or are you able to see it okay? All good?
We're good.
Nodding? Okay, good. So you see this was developed probably about 15 years ago. I was lucky enough to be in the room when we were actually talking about this concept, and it's what led to the chief, the certified chief executive designation within CMAA, which is a step above the CCM. And here we were trying to define management to leadership, and how do you look at where you are at any given time in your career, and when do you really kind of understand when you've got to the pinnacle of the industry. When you look at this management, and hopefully you can see my cursor there, when you look at management, on the management side, you really have to understand the broadest base of what we do day in and day out is operations. If you look on the right-hand side here, you'll see those things that make that up. HR and professional resources, management, marketing, food and beverage, golf, sports, and recreational management, accounting, financial management are all listed over there. So understanding the operations is the broad base of the pyramid. You then move up into asset management, and that's something that from our point of view in leadership, you really need to understand what are those things that as you start developing up this pyramid, what are those areas that you have to really be able to put your arms around and really grasp. And in doing that, the three big ones are financial management, to understand the financial workings of the club. And I would say the same, whether you're running a golf shop, you're running a teaching facility, whether you're running tournament operations, whether you're a general manager, you really do need to understand the finances. And I think one of the criticisms I've made to our PGA organization a couple of years ago was we just not doing enough in teaching and helping our members better understand finances. And I think we've come a long way. I think we're doing more of that now. But I had to go out and learn that for myself. My undergraduate degree is as a school teacher. I didn't have any financial management. I had to go out and find that stuff. The next one is physical plant, whether it's the teaching facility you work at, whether it's the golf course, whether it's the clubhouse, whatever it is, you need to understand the management of that physical plant and how do you keep that plant in the perfect condition day in and day out. And if it's not in the perfect condition when you get there, do you have a plan to get it to where it is? Because nobody likes working, in something that's less than perfect. We all aspire to get there. It's not always the case, but you need to understand how do you take it to that next level. And really, the third one is the human resource management, is the management of people. And it's not just management of staff, it's management of members, it's management of guests, it's management of people that are visiting your facility. How do you, the human resource, the capital that is the human resource today, how do you manage that, and how do you better understand how that all interplays in what you're doing? And then finally, as you move up to the pinnacle of this management to leadership model, you really are, when you get to that position, and think of yourself, I was a congressional for 16 years. When I first got there, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about the club. I mean, I was new. I didn't understand the history, didn't understand the vision, tradition, governance, none of that. But you can believe me, after 5 years, I knew that information. And over the next 10 years that I was there, I was that keeper of that information and then passed that on to the person that came after me. So again, this is a really good model. This is one that is used a lot when we talk about this. So again, I mentioned to Matt, I'm going to not only will you be able to get the recording, but I'll also do this as a PDF, and I'll send it to Matt, and Matt can share it with all of you as well. So this new model that we just talked about is based on the theory general managers and CEOs are responsible for three major areas: day-to-day operations, asset investment, which is the clubhouse or the physical amenity, and then the club culture, the whole concept of who the club is and where it is and where it's going as we move through this. So when we look at operations, as we break these three things down, we look at operations. The foundation of this model is these core competencies: private club management, food and beverage operations, accounting and financial management, human and professional resources, management generally, marketing and sales, golf, sport and recreational management, government of external influences. More and more today, we are seeing the government, the state, the county get involved in what is going on day to day at these organizations. And I remember as a golf professional, I really didn't have to get too involved in all of this because I had people above me who did. But today, more and more, it's trickling down all the way through every different department. And then finally, your buildings and facilities maintenance. I see more and more in my travels now as a consultant that more and more clubs are doing things, more and more facilities are doing things to their facilities to entice people. It's kind of like, what's your next door neighbor doing? They're doing more with family. They're doing more facilities that are family friendly, kid friendly. A lot of the rules that we've seen that were very strict in place are being relaxed across the board. So again, really important to do that. The second one, we talked about asset and investment management. And again, we talked a little bit about this, but you really need to understand the physical property. You need to understand the life cycle, for example, of a roof, the life cycle of greens. How long do greens last? How long does an irrigation system last? How long do bunkers last? When do they need to get redone? When's a good time to do a renovation on a golf course? All of these things need to be processed and brought into being. And then finally, we talked about the club culture, and that is really the traditions, the history, the visions, and intrinsically, how do you become that person, that go-to person that is the expert of the entity that you're managing? I like to think that at the end of 16 years, there was probably nobody at Congressional Country Club that knew more about the club than I did. And I think when you get into that position and you take that responsibility seriously, doing all the research, digging back into history, club was started in 1923. The 5 founding fathers were all presidents of the United States. We found a box that I researched and found that was in the footprint of the club that we dug out, that was laid in 1923. Nobody even knew it was there. We saw it in a picture, did a lot of research, and finally found it, dug it up, and it's become part of the lore of the history of the club. So if you look back at this, a general manager, somebody who's going about his business, somebody who's doing what should be done, is really focused on that operations area. A decent CEO is looking at asset management, and really once you get to that pinnacle, and the time limit for that is different for everybody. That could happen in 4 or 5 years. It could take you 6 or 8 years. It could take you 10 to 12 years, to get there. I'm not going to read this to you, but if you guys are interested in leadership, Warren Bennis, who's the author of this quote, and you'll be able to see this when you get a copy of this presentation, is probably one of the industry leaders in leadership. And as somebody, if you are interested in the subject, and I've been interested in researching this for the last probably 20 years, and I can tell you 20 years ago, there was not a lot on leadership. But if you go online now and search leadership, it's inundated. It's become the new most popular topic that's out there. A couple more quotes again. John Maxwell is another great person in leadership, and Peter Drucker. So you've got the 3 best in my mind that talk about leadership: Maxwell, Bennis, and Drucker. So a couple of things from my research. I went out and did a survey of 250 leaders in our industry, in the golf industry. And I did a survey that went out. I got a response rate of about 68%. And for those of you who are into statistics, anything over 30 or 35 is phenomenal. And I got a really, really good response rate. And I'm going to share some of those responses with you. This is Chris Widener, and he talks about the top 7 characteristics that he researched: integrity, optimism, embraces change, risk taker, tenacious, catalytic, and dedicated commitment. And I'm going to share, when I share mine, what I think is important. So here are the ones that came out of my survey. When I did this survey, put all the stuff together, at the end of this is what came back from, as I said, about 68% of 250 people. The first one was, you have to be passionate about what you do. You cannot be a leader of anything or anyone or anybody if you're not passionate about what you do. You have to be passionate. You have to absolutely love what you do every single day. It took me about 15 years to find the business that I love, and that's the business we're talking about today, about golf and clubs and running tournaments and doing that. And when you really find what you're passionate about, honestly, I can tell you, you're really not working. It's about an experience every single day you go to work. You need to be empathetic and you need to be enthusiastic. I used to tell people that I was probably one of the highest paid backslappers, high-fivers, baby handshakers in the industry. Because when I was interacting with staff members, guests, everything else, they want to see an energetic, somebody who is really excited about doing what they're doing. And that's something that comes naturally to some of us, doesn't come naturally to others. but it's something that when you're out in front, you have to be able to put that show on, for want of a better word. The next one is attitude. And again, it's one of those that ties into enthusiastic. And for those of you that have kids, it's the one that I kind of struggle with a lot. I have 2 kids. I see Michael Hoover with a Nike hat on. Don't know how many other Nike guys are on the call, but my son works for Nike and works for Nike Golf. And, you know, when early on in his career, he was a really talented athlete, you know, but he had a bad attitude. And part of it is nobody really cares. You know, nobody wants to know how tough things are. Nobody really wants to understand. People want to know that you have a positive attitude, you're working towards a goal, and you're working towards getting stuff done. So again, attitude is important. Dedicated and hardworking. I've often said, and I firmly believe, work ethic is a key to leadership. If you have a strong work ethic, you don't have to be the most talented person in the room. You just have to be able to outwork the next person. There's a lot of very talented people in our industry, but talent alone doesn't relate to being a great leader or being successful. You really have to have a good work ethic. And part of that is, you know, what time do you come to work? What time do you leave? How do you deal with the work-life balance? Energy. You know, my favorite one here is Gary Player. Gary Player is probably the Energizer Bunny, for want of a better word. I think he just turned 85 or 86 on the 1st of November. And, you know, there was something on Facebook, on Instagram, you know, him beating on his stomach and jumping on a treadmill and running. I mean, this guy is high energy. And again, understanding where that comes from. Reliable is really important. Self-discipline is critically important. We talked about being honest. Intelligent, by intelligent, I'm not talking about university smarts. I'm not even talking about book smarts. I'm talking about just understanding street smarts, being able to read a room, be able to really understand. You know, I have this conversation regularly with my kids and others. You know, people say, how many books do you read in a year? Oh, I don't read books anymore. I listen to books. But I'll probably listen to 25 to 30 books a year. When I'm out exercising, playing golf, hitting balls, whatever it is, I've got that on. It's a way of staying involved and staying up to speed and staying, you know, sort of in tune with what's going on. And then finally, whatever job you're doing, remember you're getting paid to be a problem solver. I don't care whether you're merchandising, whether you're teaching, whether you're managing a club, managing a resort, whatever it is, managing people, you are basically a problem solver. People are not, your staff are not coming to you to tell you when things are going well. People are coming to you when things are not going well, and they need help to figure out what to do next. So I talked about Gary. His family and my family have interacted over the years. Growing up in South Africa, friendly with his kids, taught at the high school that Gary went to. And he shared this with me, I want to say 30 years ago. And you can see this online. You can see it. It's now being, you know, transposed, and there's stuff about this. I think it's changed over the years, but I'll remember this because I have this written down on a little piece of paper that he gave me. We were sitting having coffee out at his farm in South Africa, and he wrote these down for me, and I keep it fondly. As I say, I think they've changed, but really important things here. Be a quality fanatic. Whatever it is that you're doing, be the best quality you can have. Say yes to people, say yes to your members. Act now, apologize later. The act of getting something done, it's so easy to talk about what you might do, but it's really the people that act. Value action over perfection. Be a list master. Make integrity an issue. Make work fun. Be a visible standard of exercise, of excellence. When you see Gary, you know, Gary is impeccable. You know, he's dressed in black. He's got everything's buttoned up, top buttons buttoned up. You know, he looks the part. Manage first, labor second. Manage from the brain, but lead from the heart. Get sufficient daily rest. I have a whole session on sleep. Any of you interested in sleep? Anybody? Not too many, but yeah, there we go. Mackenzie, it's a big part of success today is making sure you get enough rest. For the younger folks, it's a little bit more of a challenge, especially if you have young kids. And then finally, make health a priority, exercise daily, really important. So I get asked the question, we're getting close. I want to leave time for questions, but climbing the club ladder, what's the best way to become a general manager? There is no best way. You can come through food and beverage, you can come through sport, tennis, fitness, yachting, golf, agronomy, finance, HR. There is no right or wrong way. You really just need to take a lesson from archery. And the lesson is as follows. When I'm looking to place people, when I've got a club or a resort, I just put a general manager in a resort in the Bahamas, just finishing putting general manager at Riviera Country Club, happened to be the PGA of America president, Jim Richardson, that just we placed there. When we're putting these people in places, well, this is what I'm looking for. So I share this with you because as you start moving through your career, what are the things that are going to separate you from everybody else? I've got a stack of resumes sitting on my desk for a position we're doing, in New Jersey. And, you know, we'll have 30, 40 resumes. What are the things that stick out? You need to have in your quiver, you need to have your education. You need to put in the things that you've done. What is it that you've done? Are you PGA certified? Are you teacher certified? Do you have CCM? Do you have a master's degree? Do you have an MBA? What are the things that you have in there? What are the things that are missing? What are the things on the education side you're missing? What are the things that you think would be helpful to be able to put into your quiver to be able to do that? This is a big one. What are your interests? People are looking for people who are interesting, people who are exciting, people who are doing different things and can put that on a resume, and it's a conversation starter. So just to full disclosure here, I weigh 235 pounds. I'm about 5'11" ¾ but I've done 2 Hawaiian Ironman triathlons. The reason I tell you that is because I'm not built to do a triathlon. And I figured I wanted to do something to put on my resume that was an opener, that was something that showed people determination, grit, you know, being able to put in long hours, being able to do stuff. And that was my choice. Everybody's different. Some may run a marathon, some may do something else, but you got to find something that makes you interesting. What are your sports achievements? Marathon, state championships, played on the PGA Tour, won a PGA Tour event. What are those things? What are your other credit certifications? And at the end of the day, how many arrows you have in your quiver is what's going to allow you to really be able to stand out and get the position. When you build your resume, you got to find a great mentor. You got to work at a great facility. You got to go the extra mile. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You got to start at the bottom, finish at the top. We talked about resume. You've got to network. What you're doing right now is networking. The 10 of you on this call should afterwards all be networking together. You all have something in common and you probably know each other, or maybe you're friends, but you need to network. Get involved with different organizations outside of what's expected. You know, we're all involved in the PGA, but what other stuff is out there? Toastmasters, what else is out there that could help you? And then just kind of put more arrows in your quiver. Couple of smart career moves for people. The first one we're all proficient in, and we're probably all rules experts. I think not, but we all know a lot about that. One thing in food and beverage I can tell you, and that's about wine. You really, if you can understand wine, it's an opener. It's something that people really like to talk about. HR, understand HR, finance, understand fitness, understand food and beverage in general, understand IT. It impacts every one of us. Understand multitasking, understand what good service is. You know, go to a Four Seasons hotel, go to a Nordstrom's, go to a place where you see good service, and then strategic thinking and planning. A couple of things. If you get the GM job, You got to negotiate your remuneration, your benefits, your contract, your performance evaluation. What are the powers that you have? Who do you report to? What are your hours? What is your opportunity to do continuous education? And then how do you take care of your family? All critically important things that you should be looking at as you go through this process. What is it? A couple of things a GM should do and shouldn't do. I'm going to kind of move through this quickly just so that I can get to the end of this and take some questions. The most important one here is you have to lead by example. You are going to be scrutinized in a leadership role day in and day out, hour in and hour out, minute in and minute out. You can't set a foot wrong because as the leader, you are the one that is setting the tone. People are going to watch how you comb your hair, how you groom, where you park your car, how you interact with people. Everything's going to be scrutinized. So you really need to understand setting the tone, leading by example. Couple of things that are important: personal appearance, attitude, visibility, associations you join, and then your own goal setting and planning. I'm going to skip that one. So in conclusion, I still believe today that it's the best kept secret in hospitality. I urge you all to look at your quiver and look what's in your quiver and see what is missing and what are the things that you want to put in your quiver. After this, Matt will give you my email address. He'll give you my cell number if you want it. If any of you want to discuss the quiver and what to put in your quiver, if you want to talk about things that you think should be done to be able to better get yourself to the next level, there's a resource. I'm offering that to all of you today. Just give me a call, send me an email. I'm pretty good about getting back, and I'll make time. CPI, continuous personal improvement, day in and day out. And then the big one is, after today, will what we talked about cause you to take action? Because if it didn't cause you to take some kind of action, you've just wasted an hour. And I hope that out of this, you're going to get something, whether it's an email to me, a text message to me, a phone to me, join me on Facebook, or call one of the people that are on this call. You need to take some kind of action. And then finally, be yourself, and have fun. Got a couple of quotes. I'll send those to you as well, because I like quotes a lot. But I want to thank you all for your attention. And I'm going to go to some of these questions here. Training Academy, Matt's putting that in there. And Hendrik, you haven't slept well since 1988. I hear you, brother. I hear you. I didn't sleep well last night. So I'm going to get out of this and get into back into the screen and open it up to anybody who has any questions. Matt.
Yeah, this is your chance here. Michael's offered himself outside of this webinar as well, but any questions at all, feel free to unmute. I'll start, Michael, maybe what is in your searches, what are the top things that you're looking for? What do you see as differentiating PGA member in your executive search?
So Matt, the question, it's normally similar, but if I'm doing this, whether I'm doing a search for a golf professional, head professional, director of golf, or general manager, I'm looking for somebody that is a little different, right? I'm looking, and I don't mean weirdly different. I don't mean dress funny. I don't mean, act or behave funny. I'm looking for differentiators. I'm looking for somebody that stands out as being different, somebody who's bringing something a little different to the table. And I'm going to go back to that concept of arrows in your quiver. And I think you all get that Robin Hood and the quiver story. But what are the arrows that you have? If I'm looking for a golf professional, it's a fait accompli that you have to have a PGA certification, right? That's a given. But what else have you done? What else shows me that you are doing more with your life than just being a golf professional? What makes you more exciting? What makes you somebody that other people would want to engage with, somebody who other people would want to talk to, somebody that other people would want to would find interesting. That's what I'm trying to find. And that's where, in sharing with all of you, these little snippets, whether it's a triathlon, whether it's a marathon, whether you've been part of a team that's done speed golf and you're part of 4 guys that played a golf hole the quickest, what are those little nuggets that are in there that make you different? What is it about your family that you could share that makes you different? Just being a parent is huge, right? For those of you parents, you know what that takes. If you're really involved in coaching your kids' soccer team or whatever it is, those are the things we're looking for. So the easy, quick answer is, what are you doing outside of what I'm expecting? And what is it that really sets you apart from everybody else? Because, it's so, especially here in America, mediocrity is the norm. It is. It just is. People watching television, people not exercising, people, it's mediocre. People are happy with that. And what I'm looking for is, I'm looking for that person that's prepared to put their head up above being mediocre and wants to do something. I'm looking for that differentiator that's out there. So.
Hendrik, I see you unmuted. Your question?
Well, it's maybe partially a question and partially some commentary. But, I do have a keen interest in what the differentiators are, particularly for PGA members. Like you, Michael, I'm a CSCM member or CMAA member. My intention in participating in this discussion, and congratulations to those that are here today. I think this is step one in being a differentiator, and that's taking the time to communicate with each other. There's a couple big concepts that you brought up. One of which is networking. One of the tenets of CMAA. I can't really undervalue that concept, and not so much or not just with each other, but also networking with your members and the golf space at large. I have noticed over my tenure that those that have a deeper understanding of the connections within our industry, members and clubs alike, just have so much more, and to your point, Michael, more interesting stories to tell. And that, is like gravitas, right? You want to spend time with people that connect each other. And as a club manager, in my role, the ability to connect experiences amongst our members is one skill set that is used daily. So I wouldn't. I was more commenting on your focus there, Michael. But the one thing that struck me as very, very valuable, at least in my career, is when you do different or take a tact, whether that be in private clubs or otherwise, those that decide to be part of the private club atmosphere really needs to understand the construct of committees and boards. You made the comment that you've seen folks struggle with that aspect of their employment, and for some reason or another, they may be moving on or making changes. The ability to drive your business and focus on operations while still maintaining relationships and positive work arrangements with your committees and boards is vitally important. And I have not seen education that focuses specifically on that task. So, in my bucket, I would love to see somebody that really broke that down into its core elements and how to maintain good relationships.
Good points. I mean, really good points. And, I think going back to those differentiators, it's interesting because if I'm talking to somebody who's a non-golf professional, the differentiator for me is are you prepared to go and take a golf rules exam? We've all done that, right? How many of you on this call are certified golf rules officials? Anybody? Couple of you. Those of you who put your hands up, you know how difficult that exam is, right? You know how tough it is to pass that exam. And this is somebody who's got a golf background. It's a tough exam to pass. To get certified by the PGA of America or the RNA in rule certification, it's not easy. So I tell people who are non-golfers, you're never going to go through a playing ability test. You're never going to get down to a scratch handicap. You're never going to become a golf professional. But one thing you could do is you could go and write a rules exam. All you have to do is learn. You have to open the book. You got to study. You got to look at the decisions. You got to look at the rules. You go in, and we have lay people all over the world that have done these rules exams and passed and done really well. So I tell people who are not in golf, follow that road. And I give an example for all of those that are golfers. I got stuck on wine. Yeah, I really like wine. I'm a wine collector, but I wish I was a wine sommelier. Imagine if golfers, and you can put whatever you want in there, food critic, but I'm just using wine as an example. If you could really advance your knowledge on wines, and I'm not suggesting you be a sommelier, which is also outside of golf, one of the most difficult exams to pass. To become a certified sommelier is very difficult to do. But if you knew the broad base of all the different wines, you knew the different regions, you knew where they came from, and you could talk very, comfortably about wines, that would be a big separator for me. And there's many like that. But again, Matt, I think it's a really good question. And Hendrik, I appreciate you saying that. I think the ability to connect and interact with fellow members in different areas is critical. It's in my business, when I'm looking for somebody to fill a position, what do? I network, right? I'm out on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. I'm calling people that I know and say, hey, who do you know that might be interested in this really fantastic job that's being offered, down here in Florida? And that's how you get it. And you get that from network and being, present and active, and also being involved in your association, giving time to the PGA of Canada, giving time to the PGA of America, giving time to CMA, giving back to the industry is another way of connecting. It's another way of networking when you do that, because you're exposed to a lot of different things. Any other questions?
Michael, if I could ask one. Hi, it's Kevin Thistle. I'm the CEO of the PGA of Canada, but I've been lucky enough to hear you speak a couple of times. Fantastic. Love today. Just a question. Proud PGA member myself for about 37 years. And what about the importance of financial acumen? I just found as a young man coming up at the PGA, we had so many skills, and now I'm going to steal your wine sommelier. I love that idea. But what about young professionals who come up through the shop, have the rules, have the playing, have the teaching? What about the financial aspect? And because it's a GM call, and that's one thing I've said for 20 years, I think I'd like to see our young people maybe get a little more involved in. So just your comments, and thanks again for speaking today.
Hey, Kevin, thanks. I referenced this in this presentation. I think it's an area that, in my experience with the PGA of Great Britain, PGA of South Africa, PGA of Australia, PGA of New Zealand, and our own PGA of America, and I don't know enough of your organization to make this a comment, but we never teach finance. But think about this, we don't teach finance at high school. They are nowadays, for the people coming through now, my kids who are 35 and 30, they never did financial courses at high school. I never got a course at high school. I never got a course at college. Nobody taught me how to do my taxes. Nobody taught me how to read, the finances. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's something that, and I had this going back with Jim Autry back when he was in leadership role with our PGA. I said, how can we elevate our position if we don't understand the finances? If when you get in a room and people are talking about spreadsheets, they're talking about finances, debits and credits, and we don't understand that, and we are selling merchandise, we're bringing in money, we're taking money's going out, and yet we don't understand cost of goods sold, we don't understand shrink, we don't understand all of those other really important financial, equations that we need to use to run our business. You're absolutely right. I still today, even though we're doing more of it today than we've ever done before, I still don't think it's enough. And I think I see in our industry, the ones that really kind of move forward are people that are going outside of our industry to get that education. I went to Cornell University, did a 7-day course in finance for dummies. Literally, that's what it was called, finance for dummies. And at Cornell University, so hospitality finance, that was a week out of my life, but it was the most invaluable thing I could have done because I really got to understand finance and it stood me in great stead. So Kevin, I agree with you. And I think it's something that, Matt, as you work through your education, if you can factor that in, it really is an important part of who we are and how you will, move forward in the future. Go ahead, Hendrik.
Maybe I'd speak to Matt as well. Bridging off of what Michael was talking about when it comes to finance, what's vitally important, I think, is looking at the not-for-profit area, and as that might be different from the for-profit space. Having an understanding of both and how to drive those businesses is a really key component, I think, to differentiating yourself, particularly in an interview. The not-for-profit space, which I know some of you folks on the call here are in, really focusing on balance sheet there, and Michael's points about facility management and asset management is a key there. When you break it down operationally in the not-for-profit space, there's no real great contributors operationally. Your budgets are basically set to break even. So where the driving force and the advancement in the private club sector is really on the balance sheet and how your equity grows over time, and that's reinvestment into your property. So you're effectively designing, good, experiences, memorable experiences on the property every year, just so that you can create an environment that people want to join. So they bring you initiation money and investment back into the property. So understanding those relationships, balance sheet focus and strategic planning focus, that's really where the nuance of finance comes in these environments. The general accounting is, you're going to have folks that can help you in that, and as long as you understand basics of accounting, you're probably okay. But understanding how to drive your business into the future and use the reporting from an asset perspective is a key.
Yeah. Good. Anybody else? Matt, I don't see anybody else, but gentlemen, as we wrap up, because I don't see any ladies on the call, but as we wrap up, Matt, please feel free to share my my email address and my cell number with everybody. I am on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you want to connect, that's a good place. I do a lot of postings and put a lot of information up there. Be happy to connect with all of you. And please feel free to call or send me a text is normally the best way, or an email. I'd love to connect with you, love to interact with you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to do so. Matt, I'll make a copy of this and get it to you so you have it to be able to send out to everybody. And again, thank you all for taking time out of your day to be with me. I really do appreciate it.
On behalf of the 10 participants here, thank you for your time. And I will follow up later today with a recorded version of this, the PowerPoints, and Michael's contact information. So he has offered himself, and something that not everybody does. So highly encourage everyone to take advantage of that opportunity. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Thank you very much. It's great.
Thanks, guys. Look forward
Thanks
to
very
it.
much.